Hello, everybody, and welcome to Church at Home with Rachel for Tuesday, the 24th of February. Today is going to be a tough talk because a week ago today, I spent the day as an invited guest to a sort of a round table gathering of people who work with Indigenous ministries, people who work with the group that works with missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls, and Two-Spirit LGBTQ plus groups, people who are um, working on the recognition of domestic violence and justice, and calls for action regarding missing and murdered women and girls, Indigenous women and girls. It was a very tough day to listen because I was invited to come and speak on behalf of the church, which is a very difficult thing to do. And it was very clear that I can't speak on behalf of the whole church. All I can do is speak on behalf of myself and to speak on behalf of myself and what I can do within my church, and the recognition that the church in the past has been a contributor to the problem of today. Um, Partway through the day, one of the speakers acknowledged that we'd been there for about 4 or 5 hours, and they said that it's quite possible that in the length of time we had been gathering, there could have been at least 4 or 5 women or other Indigenous peoples who had been disappeared in that time that we gathered. We talked about the importance of recognizing that our Indigenous peoples, when they go into our hospitals, are often, because of systemic racism, are shoved to the side, who aren't helped as quickly as possible. That was hard for me to hear because I understood from having been there just a month and a half ago, in the emergency department in our Brandon hospital, being there for hours and hours, 2 days in a row, for relatively simple things, and seeing everybody who was waiting because we have so few resources, so few doctors, so few beds available, and seeing that I did not personally recognize any systemic racism that day. I saw lots of people who were overworked and very tired, and lots of people who were sick and hurting and needing assistance getting it as quickly as possible. But then, of course, I'm looking through white eyes. I don't know what it's like to sit there knowing that you've been there for 7 or 8 hours and you're wondering, is it because of the color of my skin or my last name? One of the things in Canada that we are dealing with as part of our Truth and Reconciliation, but also which has come out of that, is the call to acknowledge Red Dress Day. And the symbol of the red dress is the recognition of these women who have disappeared. We opened the day with a YouTube video talking about a young girl from Whitehorse in Yukon who disappeared one night and was never found. Her disappearance, presumed murder, has never been solved. And the great irony of that is her own mother, who worked for a community group that tried to help families and to search for their missing children, was later murdered herself. And after a couple of years, they found the person who killed her, but she died not knowing what happened to her daughter. This is not an unusual thing. The number of women, Indigenous teens and children who disappear in our country is abhorrent. And what is more difficult is how hard it is to recognize the few resources that are put to that. This has come home in particular after this past week of watching as the news anchor, the mother of the news anchor from a big network in the States, was able to use her platform to try to find what had happened to her mother. DNA being fast-tracked and available within 24, 48 hours, and inviting all of the neighborhood to submit their doorbell camera recordings to the police. People on the lookout for something in this neighborhood almost immediately. And where in Canada and probably also in the United States and anywhere else where there are indigenous peoples, if we looked around and said how many times are the police called and we're told wait 24, 48, 72 hours, or there's a new gang in town, they're probably connected with them, we just don't have the resources. Why can we not recognize that if the resources can be made available for someone famous whose mother has been abducted, why can't we make those resources available for another person, a woman who is a child, an auntie, a daughter, who has a mother to a child, who is a cookum, who is the loved one of someone, or even if they have no one, they are still a child of God. One of the things that came home for me, um, two things came home for me. One of them was, where can we start locally? And one of the places we can start locally, and I am going to put myself into this and hopefully with God's help find people who will help me, is acknowledge that in Canada anyway, we have many First Nations communities that are being evacuated on a fairly regular basis, whether it's because of forest fires or ice storms or flooding. And when they're evacuated, they come away from very isolated communities where they have a particular um, lifestyle and food, like moose meat and things like that. And they're taken away from that immediately, often without opportunity to pack up all their things, to get their identification, to make sure that everybody in their family or their little network is with them. And they get taken to big cities like Winnipeg or Brandon or other places where they don't know the people, they don't have the resources. They're working with Red Cross and other groups that may have the best intentions but don't know them. And how difficult it is for them to have food that they know. If you've living in a remote community, and you're used to eating fish and moose meat, having a wrap from Qdoba or Boston pizza twice a day is not, first of all, not going to be healthy for you, but it also isn't giving you any sense of home or peace in a time when you have been ripped away from all the things, the community, your home, all of the things that make you feel safe. We need to find ways when people are evacuated to our communities to help them have places to go, places for the kids to go and play, places where their teachers can come and teach them with the recognition that what they are learning at their grade level may not be the same as just plopping them into a local school and expecting them to be able to compete or understand. Are there places where we could have freezers available for traditional foods that the cookums and the aunties could come and use our kitchens to feed their people? Are there playgrounds that we could open up, or library spaces where the kids could come together, where volunteers could help them with homework or read them stories? Are there things we could do to make sure they're not have small children and teenagers, especially teenage girls, placed in hotels that are the ones that are, rented by the hour or right there beside the stripper bar, or other places where there are people who might make them, people who are already vulnerable, may put them at risk. We are already dealing with an epidemic of Indigenous women and girls, children disappearing and being murdered. But then to bring them into communities where there are people predators who will anticipate that and go and seek them out and find them. As host communities for evacuees, we have to do better. I don't know how that works yet, but we need to work on that, and I pledge myself to working on that in any ways I can. The other thing that came home to me was something that one of the panelists spoke about, was that if only if every person who thought about, cared about, heard about the plight of these missing and murdered Indigenous persons were to share that news, share the information, share the concern with one other person, and then that person shared it with somebody else, only one other person, it wouldn't take very long before we had many, many, many people paying attention. not just to the alerts that say, have you seen this person on Facebook, but also paying attention for when you see someone walking down the street or if something has happened. Just a couple weeks ago, there was a case where a man, violently abducted an Indigenous woman from her community. And for whatever reasons, it did make it onto an alert on our cell phones and things throughout southern Manitoba. And it worked. The man was found and the woman was found safe. Maybe not unharmed, but they found her alive. How would it hurt if we figured out ways to do that more and more? How would it hurt if we put our resources together to thinking about places like, for instance, one of the things they taught us was when you're searching for an Indigenous woman who's been missing, especially in the north, look at where Manitoba Hydro has gone. Where are the newly plowed roads in the woods, places where people have been working, the mining roads, the logging roads, places where someone could abduct somebody and take them with little risk of being seen and little difficulty in getting them there. Why aren't we checking those places, the trap lines, the fishing lines? Why aren't we looking in places where people could be found? And why, by God, are we not looking at all? Even if there might be a chance that that teenager was involved in gang-related things, why does that mean we don't look? There is no excuse for our society, our community to turn a blind eye, because by God, we know that if that was the mayor's daughter, or if it was the premier's son, RCMP, local police, provincial police, they'd all be out looking. Facebook would be splattered with it. And it shouldn't matter who the parent is. It should simply matter that that person is a child of God. And so I'm asking you for prayers and resources or ideas about how I might reach out to others to figure out how we might do something here in Brandon when it comes time for evacuations, because we will have them. The climate, what it is, there will be forest fires and there will be more of them and they'll start sooner, and we need to be prepared to receive them in the best possible ways. So if you have ideas for me or people I could turn to, let me know in the comments or email me. But I'm also asking you to, as you watch this video, to share this video with someone else. Put it on Facebook, share it in an email, encourage people, because every time we talk to someone else about the plight of Indigenous, missing and murdered Indigenous women, girls, Two-Spirit, LGBTQ+, every time we open one person's eyes to this plight, we widen the net. We add possibility that somebody might be found before it's too late. The more people we talk to about this, the more people we can convince that this is something that needs to be talked about, and then convince our governments to do the same, the safer our Indigenous communities will be. It's not an option. It's a mandate. So I'm asking you, share this video with people who you know. Share the word. Look it up. Missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls. And 2Spirit, LGBTQ+ peoples. Look it up on the web. Share your links with other people. Let's make this a snowball effect. Let's let people know how important this is to share with the world. Because these are our children. These are our aunties, our cookums, our sisters. These are our family members, regardless of the color of our skin. Thank you for sharing this work with me. And thank you for praying for all those who are out there, praying that someone will find them. And thank you for praying for the families of all those who are waiting to be told, we found your daughter. Whether it's in another waste facility, or in the woods, or in someone's backyard, they all need to be brought home. They all need to be named. They all need to be mourned. They all need to be remembered. Thank you for helping me in this. God bless you. And I will see you again tomorrow on Church at Home with Rachel.